And then the second is from my grandfather. How about that? I had a family reunion, and my uncle actually had this printed and passed it out to a lot of us. But it really speaks to what I'm all about as well. And the quote is, "Attitude is everything, and misery is optional," which I think if you live by that, it could always be worse. So even if you have the worst day in the world, like, is cancer running through your body? No. Yeah, it could be a lot worse.
Right.
Always look at that. Is your family okay? Is there not
Did everybody at the event take that?
He passed it out, yeah.
To everybody. Did anybody feel like they're talking to me particularly?
Well, my uncle who printed it out, he actually printed it out because he was not following that advice.
Okay.
And it kind of helped him through a certain situation. So he's like, him and I just kind of jammed on it for a while. I'm like, yeah, man. I mean, even on my worst day, I have it better than, in my opinion, 95% of people. So I'm not gonna complain.
Very cool.
All right.
So my quote is in the same vein about delegation, but this was a quote from The Outsiders, and I'm sorry that I don't have the person who said it, but they were talking about a company called Teledyne, and all of the, regional offices were like really on their own. And one of the, senior managers at one of the regional areas was talking specifically about the CEO and said that he would delegate to the point of anarchy.
Oh, I remember you saying this, yeah.
And, this was a company that was wildly successful. And you said, people would say you'd walk in there and you couldn't figure out who the boss was because everybody had responsibilities for certain things. And from the top level down, this was not something where they said, like, here is our corporate culture and here's exactly how you do X, Y, and Z. And sometimes I feel like we need to do that. And in certain examples, it works really well. For example, Wells Fargo. Very clear corporate culture, very clear training, and they've been wildly successful in that area. So it doesn't mean that this is the one way to do it, but it's a way where somebody has done it where they've really delegated out. And these, it was essentially like he was running a bunch of independent businesses, and those businesses reported back. And if somebody wasn't doing their job well, then they moved on. So it's just, I guess that's the other side of the coin versus the incredibly corporate, here's exactly how you do everything. And sometimes we talk about Yard House, which is a previous employer of ours. They had everything down to the book, every single thing. If you wanted to know, hey, where does the ketchup go? How do I clean the ketchup? There was a manual to tell you exactly how to do that at all times. And I think that this guy looked at it in terms of, I'm just going to hire people who can figure it out and do it well. And if they don't, I'll find somebody else. So that's like the far left side of the...
But if you do that, aren't you essentially hiring somebody and hoping they come up with the culture? Meaning, like, if you have no processes or workflows or mandatory things that you do in order to keep everything running correctly.
Well, it depends on what your success metric is. And for this guy, the metric for success...
Well, even Wells Fargo is profit per employee.
Right. And so for them, in order to get profit per employee, they chose that in order to get there, we have to tell everybody to do it exactly this way. Whereas Teledyne, all they wanted was free cash flow. And so they would hire people and they would give them a number that they had to hit and then say, hit this number. But
then doesn't it open you up to like a manager making everybody work 90 hours a week just so they have cash flow and they look good on paper?
Well, but if you make everyone work 90 hours a week, those people will quit. And then you'll wind up in an HR crisis and you don't hit your numbers. Like, there's a balance there. You can't just say, like, well, I've got to hit this number, so I'm going to work everybody 100 hours and pay them shit because people won't take the job and they won't keep the job. True. And then you won't hit those numbers because no one's going to want to work for you. And word gets out, too, about companies. Like, people know, like, even some of our clients, I've talked about it with other clients at other networks, and they're like, yeah, I've heard about that place.
Right.
They work you like a dog.
True.
And it's like you look at that like grad school almost. So I don't know, but this was a company that was incredibly successful and was returning, close to 30%.
Like you said, it's super valuable to just understand. That's why we were both reading books about multiple companies, multiple CEOs, and try to pull 7% from everybody and kind of craft how you want to do it because there's, what do they say, 1,000 ways to skin a sheep or whatever the...
But even, I think it was a little bit of a light bulb for you from the podcast that you listened to about the company that had no... employees in-house. It was a very small...
he makes $80 million a year. and over 100 employees and doesn't have an office.
Right.
Works at a Starbucks. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
And so that doesn't mean that that's the way it's going to work for us, but it's great to use those. And that kind of goes back to my thing of like use all those as inputs.
Absolutely.
Wells Fargo is a great case study, as is Teledyne, as is this other place with no employees in an office.
Yep.
But for us, it's going to be something with
So
a little bit of
different.
everything,
Yep.
or certainly different from those examples.
Absolutely.
But that's why it's so important to just read, because it made me think like, huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.